Well, maybe a lot of drugs. He ended up dead. The other made his friends in politics. He did a lot of fundraising and met some important people. He was named to head a federal commission, and he ran it with his high school pals and people he met on airplanes. He ran it right into the ground. The government is still trying to figure out raw talent and guts and money. In the movie business, it sometimes seems as if there's an awfully thin line between genius and fraud. There is so much money at stake and so many deals being made and so much hot air being blown around. There are plenty of opportunities for self-promoters with a roll of ready cash. In the 1980s, there was another volatile ingredient permeating the Hollywood scene: cocaine. Exposé's chief correspondent Brian Ross has a Hollywood story that includes a blonde, a cocaine deal, a multi-million-dollar movie, and a murder.
Among Hollywood's beautiful people in the 1980s, this woman, Laney Jacobs, was the queen of cocaine. Her never-ending supply of drugs made her a millionaire and as sought after as any starlet. But only now is the incredible story coming out of just how Laney Jacobs, the sexy, blonde coke dealer, came straight out of the violent world of big-time cocaine dealers in Miami to the top of the movie business, to a cell in the county jail, charged with murder over a movie. This was one of the big budget movies of the 1980s, The Cotton Club, the story of the famous Harlem nightclub in New York.
What is it you want, Dutch? What is it?
The movie starred Richard Gere and Gregory Hines as entertainers caught up in a world of gangsters and violence in the Roaring '20s. The Cotton Club was directed by Francis Ford Coppola, and even though Laney Jacobs' name is not in the credit, it turns out that long before the cameras started to roll, Laney Jacobs was in the middle of the Cotton Club deal. The producer of the movie, Robert Evans, was part of Laney Jacobs' cocaine world, one of her lovers. Evans, a movie maker with movie star good looks, who, until he almost destroyed himself with cocaine and his relationship with Laney Jacobs, was a very big name in Hollywood, the head of production at Paramount, the man who made The Godfather.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
And Chinatown.
No? I'm sorry.
And Love Story.
Court is now in session.
Now, in a Los Angeles courtroom, Laney Jacobs, looking very prim and proper, a lot different from when she was queen of Hollywood cocaine, is on trial for murder. The murder in 1983 of a man involved in a kind of sex-drug movie triangle with Laney Jacobs and Robert Evans that reveals a lot about how one big-budget movie was made in Hollywood in the coked-up 1980s.
I was selling cocaine.
Also on trial with Jacobs, 3 of her bodyguards in the drug business, who prosecutors say were the triggermen in the murder. The murder victim was Roy Radin, a nobody in Hollywood, who actually had made a lot of money with the touring roadshow of old vaudeville performers.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Roy Reagan's tribute to vaudeville.
In Hollywood, Radin became a big cocaine customer of Laney Jacobs, and that's how he met Robert Evans as a potential source of big money to help make the Cotton Club movie.
So they shared a coke dealer and they got in business together.
Well, and Laney made the introductions, or set this introduction thing up.
Jonathan Lawson was Roy Radin's closest friend, and police say he is lucky to be alive. He was supposed to be killed with Radin.
So this big cocaine dealer, Laney Jacobs, was the person who brought together 2 producers in a major motion picture deal.
Yes.
No one was surprised about that at the time?
No. Well, you seem to be surprised now. Why? A coke dealer could be in a position to put together 2 producers to create a film.
And this was the Cotton Club.
And that was the Cotton Club.
The Cotton Club murder case began with what police say was a trap set for Roy Radin at one of Los Angeles' top restaurants, La Scala, a place where studio bosses and producers and stars can be seen every night making big movie deals over La Scala's famous veal Milanese. According to the testimony at the trial, Radin was picked up at his apartment building in a limousine by Laney Jacobs to go to La Scala to talk things out after the two had quarreled bitterly over cocaine and the Cotton Club movie deal. But Radin never got there. Weeks later, in a remote area north of Los Angeles, a beekeeper, Glenn Fisher, made a grisly discovery.
I crossed through a dry wash and went around a bush, and around the bush there was a hand sticking up, and there was a body laying there.
He'd been shot and rolled.
Homicide detectives say Roy Radin was marched up this hill and then executed in such a brutal way that the body, when found, bore little resemblance to a human being. Homicide detective Carlos Avila.
It was very severe. You know, you take account that the man's been shot in the back of the head 8 to 10 times, and then you see how the face has been distorted with a quarter, what amounted to a quarter stick of dynamite.
Blown up in his mouth?
Yeah, in his mouth. Just placed it right in his mouth and lit it and blew it up, and that's brutal.
But it's all over a movie. That's the thing that is so shocking, it seems.
Yes.
When you got in the car with Mr. Radin...
On the witness stand this week, Laney Jacobs said she and Radin and Evans were having a dispute over the Cotton Club, but that she had nothing to do with the murder. That without her knowledge, her bodyguards had killed Roy Radin.
And that's when he was killed, is that correct?
I didn't have him killed, Mr. Kahn.
The murder took Roy Radin out of the Cotton Club movie deal, but it didn't stop Robert Evans from making the film, which came out a year later in 1984 and was a box office disaster, soon forgotten. And for a time, it looked like the murder of Roy Radin would be forgotten, and that some people in Hollywood wanted it forgotten. Back east, Radin's sister, Kate, waited year after year for police in Los Angeles to arrest somebody for her brother's murder.
I've been calling Los Angeles once a week for 6.5 years.
Kate Radin says what bothered her most was that even in death, her brother Roy was being treated like a Hollywood nobody, and that the Hollywood somebody, Robert Evans, according to the police, wasn't helping much in the investigation of the Cotton Club and Laney Jacobs.
She was his drug dealer. You know, she was sleeping with Bob Evans. If she mentioned anything to him, he needs to come forth and tell. It's one thing, you know, again, I understand he's a Hollywood producer, okay? My brother could have been a Hollywood producer. He will never have that chance.
I felt awful, Mr. Kahn, about what had happened.
On the witness stand, in testimony that shocked prosecutors, Laney Jacobs said that soon after she found out that Roy Radin had been murdered, weeks before the body was discovered, she told Evans.
And what did you tell him about what had happened?
That Mr. Radin had been killed.
You never thought about whether or not Mr. Evans would call the police and tell him that he had just been informed about a murder?
Mr. Kahn, I don't really remember what I thought about.
So Mr. Evans had no advance knowledge that a murder was going to take place, did he?
Absolutely not.
If Laney Jacobs is telling the truth, Robert Evans, one of Hollywood's best-known producers, kept quiet while police spent more than 5 years trying to solve the case. Evans would not talk with expose, and in a pretrial hearing, he refused to testify, invoking the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination. The only other time Evans is known to have been asked in public about Roy Radin was in this 1985 interview with a freelance reporter, whose questions made Evans angry.
Represented.
You know Roy Radin? If you start getting into that, I'm just going to walk off the show right now.
Evans later walked out of the interview.
Mr. Evans? Mr. Evans?
And finally ordered the camera crew off his property. This week, a lawyer for Evans said Evans, in his lawyer's words, was absolutely not involved in any aspect of the murder of Roy Radin.
See that place on that phone bill?
Laney Jacobs was on the stand every day this week, undergoing cross-examination from prosecutors and the lawyers for the men on trial with her.
Isn't it the case that in reality the reason Mr. Radin was killed was because he stood between you and the Cotton Club deals being completed?
Same objection.
Absolutely not, Mr. Kennedy.
And now, almost 8 years to the day that Roy Radin was murdered, a jury is about to decide the fate of the woman who, for a while, brought together the worlds of big-time Hollywood and big-time cocaine.
Last week, Brian Ross introduced us to a couple of grandmothers who were fighting mad at the mafia, Hattie Wallace and Ruth Colvin from Louisa, Kentucky.
Police found Kim Leach's body under an abandoned hog shed near the Suwannee River. Her killer had raped her and slit her throat. Joe Alloy was in the jail cell with Bundy when he heard the news.
We handled telling Ted they found the body. That's one of the times he went off on me. And he really scared me. I'm not a scary guy. And he scared me a lot. He got real weird. His body changed, his muscle tone changed, he was sweaty, he was smelly. It was an eerie presence.
His mother worked at the University Registrar's office.
We did love each other, but it was a horrible, twisted, drunken, pained, love-hate thing. And we fed off each other for that 3 years. And pretty soon, it wasn't good enough. I either had to kill her or I had to kill somebody else.
His M.O.? Cruised the campus looking for hitchhikers.
I killed a co-ed in January of 1973, and I said, this has to stop. Less than 30 days later, this is January 8th, February 5th, I killed 2 co-eds.
He shot or stabbed 6 young women, and then he stopped.
It was horrible. For them and for me, too. I was carrying it on and on. I'll live with it till I die, till I'm dead. I never did it again. But you say, wait a minute, you cut your mother's throat. Yeah, but I hit her in the head with a hammer. She was senseless. And sadly, some people have analogized that to a slaughter of a cow.
Edmund Emil Kemper, serving life in a California prison.
I grew up on pictures, violent pictures and books in magazines. Genuine severed heads, genuine stabbed dead people, real murder scenes. And this titillated all of the audience. But it fed a certain small percentage of that audience that might later get into sacrificial murder, might get into some kinds of other worship that may be their own end. You never hear from them again, so there's no resolution to the formula. In my case, it got to where it was like a dope fiend running from corner to corner looking for a better high, going from theater to theater looking for sleazier, bloodier movies, and looking around furtively at other people going in, and every now and then one of them looking furtively back at me, and I'm saying, there's a brother, there's a sister.
Local support for this program on KCPT has been provided in part by United Telecom and its long-distance company, U.S. Sprint.
Good evening, and welcome to Kansas City Illustrated. I'm Randy Mason, sitting in for John Masterman. Normally, our weekly news magazine offers up a variety of reports on topics of local interest. Some of them light, some of them heavy. For example, in 1988, Kansas City Illustrated brought you in-depth stories about the city's growing problems with crack, about arson, AIDS, and a string of unsolved prostitute murders. This week, as you probably know, we're presenting the first interview with convicted murderer Robert A. Berdella. Not a pleasant topic, but one that, given the opportunity to learn from, we felt we could not turn down. The man who did that interview is Jim McKinley, professor of English at UMKC, and a regular contributor to Kansas City Illustrated. Jim has written books and articles about crime and criminals, including a 1977 interview with James Earl Ray. At the conclusion of the roughly 30-minute edited interview, Jackson County Prosecutor Albert Reederer will join me in the studio with his thoughts on the matter. Jim?
Before you view my interview with Robert Berdella, I should say something about how and why KCPT did this interview. First, neither KCPT nor I sought this interview. It came with no strings attached, no conditions for the interview were put on KCPT, and no money was paid for the interview. Second, as to the why. KCPT and I decided to do the interview only after being assured that solid journalistic matters would be raised, including Berdella's allegations against public servants in the press and his at least partial revelation of his personality, his guilt, and his motives. As to tone, I purposely avoided all sensational details of the case, all the gore and horror, striving instead for a straightforward questioning of a serial murderer whose case will be discussed in this city for years to come. In such cases, my experience, and the experience of many journalists, suggests that the public is best served by knowledge rather than ignorance and blind hatred. Lastly, the setting. I conducted this interview in a room at the Jackson County Jail on Monday, January 2nd, 2 days before Robert Berdella was moved to the Department of Corrections Admissions and Diagnostic Center in Fulton, Missouri. Mr. Berdella, you're sitting here as a man who's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. You've confessed to murder of 6 young men in this city and crimes that horrified the city and much of the country. You've confessed to, in various degrees, felonious restraint, drugging people, sexually abusing them, torturing them, killing them, dismembering them. And until now, you've refused all interviews. So in light of all those facts, I have to ask you, why are you here? What is it you have to say to us? What is it you want to say about yourself in this case?
Well, I've had the media clamoring to get interviews with me. And after I made my last pleas, I wanted to get at least part of my side of it out. I found it very hard to find any way to do that in Kansas City. The media has so biased my case that I really could not find any forum to express some of my concerns. I couldn't even find a reporter that I thought could be objective. One of the reasons I approached TV-19 is that I came to the conclusion that the newspapers and the TV stations were so dependent upon the upon the police for their stories and their information on the stories, that they were in no position to be objective.
Your prosecutors, and I do want to quote this, when you came to plead, called your crimes wantonly vile, horrible, or inhuman.
When was this done?
I believe in documents associated with the Sheldon charges. To repeat that quote from the prosecution, these crimes were wantonly vile, horrible, or inhuman.
Okay. I think if you check with just about any attorney, you'll find that that is the standard clause that's used when they went to build a case for Capital One with the death penalty.
Without the legalism, would you agree that those crimes are wantonly vile or inhuman?
I won't disagree.
One of the things you said to me before we began this televised interview was, I want to show that I'm not as presented. And one of the main ways in which you have been presented, at least in the media, and I suppose those reports stem from, in some ways, police sources, is as an advocate of and practitioner in Satanism and witchcraft. Is this true?
Not only is it not true, I found it very offensive. And I have seen in the Star and Times, letters to the editor, a cartoon by Lee Judd, and I happen to enjoy the cartoon, stating that I am this cold, hard, emotionless individual. And letters to the editor, comments by reporters, build upon that basis. I would have to look at the public and tell them that if they believe that, and then there is still things that offend me, they should question themselves if they are not offended.
Are you saying you feel remorse or that you've been misunderstood?
I'm not going to sit here with my finger to my chin and say nobody understands me. Yes, there has been a lot of remorse. For Sergeant Cole to be at the 3 days of deposition and come out and say he saw no sign of remorse is as inaccurate as all the other statements that Sergeant Cole has made, both to the newspaper before the testimony and after the testimony.
Burdella claims that the sensational speculations of satanic practices have been fueled by police and media reports, implying that Burdella played demonic music, owned a ritual throne and fetish objects, and made animal sacrifices. Using police reports and photos, Burdella disputed every such allegation. What about the ceremonial robe that was often mentioned?
Well, I'm trying to figure out which robe.
So supposedly something hanging above a bed.
Okay, that's very easy. I have that one here. This is a Afghanistan peasant shirt showing heavy embroidery and sometimes very ingenious ways of ornamentation, like using one side of a zipper for intricate little metal pieces.
And this is not a satanic ceremonial robe?
In no way, shape, or form.
Did you have a satanic throne in your house?
I had nothing that could even be described as a throne in my house. The only thing that they may have been pointing to, which was outside in the yard, is a chair, if you will, made out of a sculptural piece by John Buck, who is now a nationally known artist. He was a student at the Art Institute at that time. This piece used to stand on a metal pole on the Art Institute grounds on its side. He built it into a chair, if you will.
Did you put bird carcasses in jars and bury them in your backyard?
No. I think if we had those photographs here, and I hope we'll have them by the time this goes to air, they will support my intention that these jars had been buried